Not a ton of activity today on the campaign trail, but I'll run through what there is. And of course, we wonder whether both all the principals will maybe alter their schedules this week if there are new developments regarding the assassination attempt. We're all very pleased that President Trump is okay. Can't ignore the politics of this with 50 days to go. The vice president has no public events. She's apparently meeting with the board of the Teamsters to talk about an endorsement in Washington. Don't know if we'll see her today at all or not. Her week ahead schedule, which was published last night, involves travel to the battleground states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin this week. President Trump not supposed to have any public events in person today. According to the Associated Press, he's getting an in-person briefing from the Secret Service. And tonight he was scheduled to unveil the new Trump family crypto platform that apparently all three of his sons, including Barron, are involved in. We'll see if he goes through with that. Tim Walz, as far as I know, no public events. He travels to Georgia at the end of the day to be in a position for events tomorrow in Georgia and in North Carolina. JD Vance, 6 o'clock tonight, part of a big victory dinner for the Georgia Faith and Freedom Coalition, Ralph Reed's organization. He's speaking along with Brian Kemp, Katie Britt, Tulsi Gabbard, and others. That starts at 6 o'clock. Not sure what time they'll eventually get to the senator from Ohio. And Joe Biden is doing some events in Philadelphia today. His week ahead schedule also available in the day book. All right. So, guys, I want to start with the assassination attempt. And again, stipulate everybody on here is happy President Trump was not hurt. Questions about whether the Secret Service did a great job, or once again, we need to question whether they're doing enough, or probably both. I think they're going to get a big dose of beef up now, and Donald Trump will be covered pretty close to an incumbent president from here on out. But Tim, starting with you, how do you see this going forward? Limiting what people say about him? In other words, will Kamala Harris be out there tomorrow attacking him, or is there a moratorium? How do you see the fallout of this affecting the last 50 days?
Yeah. Well, Mark, just to echo what you said, and I know it's not the political view of it, but absolutely this needs to be taken seriously. The Secret Service, there are questions to be answered. It seems like the take at this point is that this is a successful interdiction, but there are a lot of open questions about how this person got once again so close to the president, or the former president. As for the political impact, I think it's just in this cycle, it is just hard to know about what will happen next and what the fallout will be. I will say, I think for people who are consumers of news, people who are watching this, just put your phones down. Don't tweet flippant things. It's serious. It's not helpful to make light of a situation like this. I think the campaign obviously goes forward, and the contrast between these two candidates, which is really clear, continues to get played out. And I think that's where the campaign is going. Whether there's going to be a big impact, I'm just not sure.
So, Tim, let me just ask you, what is the day this week when Vice President Harris can say Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and say her usual rhetoric? Can she do that tomorrow in Philadelphia or not?
I don't know that she does. I mean, it looks like, at least for right now, that the schedules are going forward or events
Right.
are going forward as
Yeah,
scheduled.
but does she need to change her rhetoric tomorrow, Wednesday, or she can go right back to it tomorrow, or you don't know? It'll depend on how it feels tomorrow.
I think it depends. I think it depends on where we are. And look, the point that I'm making though is you still are going to draw the same contrast you need to draw with the former president, and he's going to do the same thing with Kamala Harris. I think all
Yeah.
sides would benefit by taking the rhetoric down a little bit, though.
Sean, let me tee you up to comment on this with two facts. One is the former president's fundraising off of this. And two, both he and his wife have now raised conspiracy theories about what might have happened regarding the Butler shooting. At the same time that he's praising the Secret Service, they're suggesting it might have been some sort of inside job, not necessarily involving the service, but still fanning the flames of conspiracy. So, Sean.
Okay. So first, just to be clear, I think that they're going to keep on. There's 50 days left. They're going to use language. They'll alter it today, tomorrow. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's just a reality that in America today, we take about 24 hours where we pause and then we go back to our routines ridiculously, regardless of the circumstance. So I don't think it's going to last very long. I think, with respect to Butler, I mean, that's what you're asking. I find it, as someone who's been a practitioner, a PR practitioner for 30 years, how this is not getting answered to me is mystifying. I mean, so I don't know if you want to call it conspiracy theories or unanswered questions or concerns, but it is scary that a event of that magnitude occurred and the federal government response and the congressional response has been so pathetic. So that's it. I think going forward on a security schedule, here's the one reality that we live in. You can put as much protection as you want around somebody. There are vulnerabilities everywhere. And I think that there is only so much that you can ask of Secret Service. They did their job yesterday. And I know everyone keeps saying, oh, well, there's this vulnerability. There's always going to be one. It's just a reality of the world that we live in, unless you want to live in a bubble. And so, as unfortunate as that is, this is where we are as a society. If you're going to be somebody that's sort of active and outdoors.
All right. Again, if you want to talk about this topic or anything else, please raise your hand. We've got some hands up, but we'd welcome more. Guys, we're going to do a rapid round through here about 6 things and just get your quick thoughts on stuff, because we do have lots of hands up. Want to get to folks. First, polling. All I care about is if Donald Trump is able to define Kamala Harris as outside the mainstream, he'll probably win. If he doesn't, he'll lose. Every poll I look at, I look through that prism, and then secondary things that sort of head in that direction. The Des Moines Register poll is one that caught my attention this weekend because it shows the race really tight within the margin of error. A state Trump won easily, a state where Biden was way behind. Donald Trump leads on every trait in that poll, and yet the poll's really close, except for abortion, who would do better on every issue he's ahead, except for abortion, and yet she's super close. That, to me, is a great sign for Kamala Harris. It means she doesn't have to cut the gap completely on these issues. The second poll, the FT, shows that she's doing better, again, within the margin of error, Trump on the economy. So I would say if I'm right that the whole thing is binary, can he define her or not? The answer in those 2 polls is he's not defining her. He's got 50 days left to do it, and she's doing a great job, mostly of playing defense. Tim, what do you think of what I said? What polls caught your eye?
No, I think that's right. I think that's spot on. I think it is also, Mark, the issues of healthcare, abortion, protecting democracy. Those all, they're not as high as the economy, but collectively together, I think, have some weight when you consider where the electorate is. To your point on the FT poll, yes, thought it was very interesting. 43-42 on able to bring down prices for Harris, whether or not their candidate cares about the middle class. I believe she had like a 6 or 7 point gap there. And then in the Reuters Ipsos poll, this is a little bit getting into the weeds, but they're tracking on the economy. Mark, to your point, the gap on that question is closing ever so slightly each poll that they do, and it goes from 9 to 8 to 7, and those are small movements, but that's from August to September. So I think she's closing the gap there. I think that is a key indicator.
So I will say, I think the ABC News poll kind of buttresses what you're saying on the economy. Trump +7, immigration +10. Here's what I thought the fascinating thing was. Despite everything that, let's be honest, I think Harris has had a good couple weeks in terms of media coverage. Wisconsin +2.6 for her, Michigan 0.15 for her, Pennsylvania 0.5, Harris 0.2 in Nevada, Georgia, Trump +0.8, +0.7 in Arizona, and +0.5 in North Carolina. The bottom line is every battleground state is not even within the margin of error. I mean, that's on a razor's edge. And any one of those states can go either direction. This is going to be a turnout election. I think the bottom line is this: people, and I've used this analogy before. They are fans of a team, but willing to acknowledge another team had a good game. So Harris, you can say that's a good ad from her. She had a good debate, whatever it is. But that doesn't mean they're not going to continue to support Donald Trump. The interesting thing I would say, Mark, is that when you look in each of these states where the margin of victory lies, it's not with people who are watching a debate. It's not with people who are high propensity voters. It's going to come down to, do low propensity voters turn out, and who do they turn out for? And who gets them out? That's the bottom line of this entire race. I think we're in, both sides are pretty much locked in. It's getting your team out and then focusing on those 50, 60, 100,000 voters in each of those 7 states.
All right, guys, rapid round here. I'm going to hold you to no more than 2 sentences on these topics, so I want to get through a lot. Again, if you'd like to get in the conversation, please raise your electronic hand if you're on the two-way platform. If you're on YouTube, you can't raise your hand, but you can also avoid putting in the chat garbage. Thank you very much. All right. Early voting has been delayed in North Carolina over the Kennedy issue, delayed in Pennsylvania about a week. We're going to have to all be working together here with peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace, as the election administration in these 7 states gets sorely tested over the next 50 days. But one word answer on this one, Sean, are Republicans ready to compete in the early vote in the battleground states, or are they still far behind?
I'll use
culturally and mechanically.
They are readier. How's that? Than they were last
Readier.
cycle, and readier than the cycle before that. So getting better, not great.
All right, Tim.
I did a scan of how many offices are in the battleground states. They're behind.
Yeah. Okay. If offices matter, then that's not good. And they definitely
people are in those offices, to be clear.
Yes. Okay. There's this ABC News story that I thought would at least be in the New York Post. It's nowhere. There's an alleged affidavit from an alleged anonymous ABC News employee who claims that the way ABC handled the debate was completely unprofessional, to say the least. If it's true, it's one of the biggest scandals in American political history. If it's not true, it's a crazy hoax that is going to discredit those who have been retweeting it. I bring it up here in our safe zone here to discuss because, again, some serious people are treating it as a serious thing. Some of you on here know exactly what I'm talking about, and some of you have no clue. It's just such an interesting information thing because this kind of been around for 3 days. The full affidavit, alleged affidavit, was posted not that long before the shooting. This news broke, and so it kind of got wiped off the map, even for those paying attention. So, Tim, is this story real or not real?
I will say not real, and I will for once take my cue from the New York Post and say they're not touching it with a 10-foot pole, and that tells me something.
If it's real, is it a big problem or devastating? If it's real,
it depends. Like part of the affidavit is like, I've worked at ABC for a while. I'm a technical person there. I feel like it was biased. I mean, like I don't know
but part of it is they colluded with the Harris campaign allegedly to control how the debate went. So I mean, you're cherry picking the more innocuous parts of it. But all right, Sean, is it real? And if it's real, how serious would it be?
Well, it's real enough to be investigated. How's that? Especially after the Hunter Biden laptop story, the precedent that the media has with that. It is real enough to be investigated. And there's one caveat that I'd like to put in this. If the questions weren't given, but the topics were, so that you know that 5 things are in and 5, therefore I don't have to study. I mean, it's like studying for a test. If you know that they're not going to cover these topics, you don't waste your time getting ready for them. Even if that is true, it is devastating to not just ABC, but to the entire industry, legacy industry. So I would just say this, the idea that no one's looking into it, especially after last cycle, is very concerning. And if we find something like this out after the fact in 6 months, it's over. I mean, like the industry, the A.G. Sulzberger's whining about media, whatever, is done.
Yeah. All right. Kamala Harris did an interview on Friday with WPVI, the ABC affiliate in Philadelphia. I think by any objective measure, it was a disaster. It was 8 minutes or so. I heard from tons of Democrats who said, thank goodness no one's going to watch this. It barely was played over the weekend on the Sunday shows and elsewhere. Sean, is this not being played places because people don't think it was that bad, or because it's a cover-up to help Kamala Harris, or because it's a local interview? Why isn't it being played?
All of the above. I mean, it's horrible. She gets asked about what she's going to do to lower prices, and she starts going off about how people, when she grew up, had nice lawns. It was pathetic, and it's a reminder as to why she didn't. So it's the idea that it's her first solo interview,
which everybody was waiting for.
And no one covers it. Why?
Yeah, Tim, why is no one covering her first solo interview?
Because a lot of the questions that she was asked and the answers that she gave are things that we've heard answers to before. Now, I understand for like national media watching, you may think, oh my gosh, like there's no news here. But that's not the point of the local interview, right? The point of the local interview is to saturate in the local market. I mean, like we're not talking about Trump's KTNV interview in Nevada.
Tim, did you think her answers were good?
Yeah, I did. I think the answers.
Tim.
No, stop. She talked about people's lawns as part of the end of an answer, and it was about the pride that middle class.
No, it was actually the beginning of her answer was about the lawns before she named a single specific. Tim, Tim, I'm going to
And she
help you out
talked
here. I'm
about
going to help you out here. Tim,
no,
I'm
no,
going to help
no.
you out here for credibility. You cannot think that those were good answers. I was
Yes, I
flooded
can.
with
Yes, I
Democrats,
can.
including Democrats who worked
They
for
were
her,
not.
who said it
Hold
wasn't
on,
good.
So
They were
can I
not
just
significantly
hold on?
different
Listen,
than policy
Tim,
answers given in the past.
Tim, let me ask you this. If you just get asked, what are you going to do to lower prices? I mean, I'm going to fight for, these policies and this is what I'm going to do. My tax cut will help this. Da, da, da.
And she talked about like the
On a
tax
riff
credit that
about
she was going to
growing
give
up
like
in
new
people's lawns.
families. Yeah.
Oh, come on. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I like with all due respect, I mean, there's times you can say that was a
It is
whip.
what it is. It is a local interview. She answered
It was her first solo interview, and
Tim,
it
one
was
of the people
horrible.
in the chat said that you're sounding like me. That's not good.
All right, I want to play you because now we'll put the shoe on the other foot. I want to show you a horrible Republican answer. This is J.D. Vance defending the dogs and cats story on CNN.
The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to, create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys are completely letting Kamala Harris coast.
Go back and play the beginning. No, go back and play the beginning of that where he said, where she asked him the first time, and he said, this is an issue that came from my constituents.
The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes.
Stop playing this. Stop playing this.
Keep playing it.
Stop playing this. Stop playing. No, Sean, I understand that if you watch the totality of the interview, he seems to be saying basically create stories, meaning from my constituents. But he did say create. But would you wish he didn't say create stories?
Yes.
Was that just like
sure?
All right.
But I mean, who hasn't misspoken? But I'm just saying that, like,
but he seems to be. To put a fine point on the Dr. Doolittle parts of this, he seems to be saying geese is true, but I have no credible evidence of dogs or cats. Geese from a public park is a lot different than stealing pets. It just is. So I'll say again, he doesn't seem to be defending the veracity of dogs and cats and pet stealing, and basically seemed to be saying, if I have to pretend that dogs and cats were stolen, pets were stolen, I will. That seems to me to be not just bad communication strategy, but wrong.
I think what he's saying is actually pretty clear, which is this issue, by bringing up this issue, you guys in the media wouldn't focus on immigration and the impact it's having on communities like Springfield, Ohio. And so by us talking about this, yes, it was inartful maybe, but because of that, we're now actually having a conversation about immigration and the impacts on communities. That's what I took away from that.
Tim, denounce J.D. Vance in the strongest possible terms. Please.
No.
If you want.
If you want. I will just say, like, this is similar in the inartful way that he puts things, which he presents himself as a good and eloquent speaker, but says things like this that get him in trouble. This is the same. This is very similar to him saying that when talking about school shootings, that he lamented that it's a fact of life, but we need to do more to solidify and fortify our schools. It is inartful. And I will say, earlier in the day, he was tweeting a video of an animal on a barbecue, and then there was a cat walking in the lawn. So there's like a bunch of innuendo here going on that they're playing around with.
Too loose and too sloppy.
Mark, can I make one comment on this? And I'm not, again, this is more about using the platform to explain. The interesting thing about this, and we're debating the merits of whether it's right or wrong or whatever, and I get that, but the thing that I found interesting is I have not seen a single issue resonate like this. There are kids, 13, 14-year-old kids that are talking about this. There are memes going around. And my point is, again, take aside, I'm not arguing the merits of this. I'm just saying that sometimes you inject something into the conversation in a way that resonates that nothing else has. And I mean, look on, some of the social media.
I hear you. All right, we got to go. We got to go to our questions. David Porter, welcome in. Tell folks where you are, who you're supporting for president, and what's on your mind, and thank you for joining.
I'm in the swing state of Oregon. So I voted for Trump in 16 and Trump in 20. I'm just looking back at polls, and you guys, you're digging deep in these polls, but what I see is this time in 20 and this time in 16, Trump was doing way worse. So I mean, and just look at Georgia today. 4 years ago.
So David, is your question why we shouldn't assume that Trump will win if he's just a little bit behind?
assume, or
Yeah.
at least assume he's in a
Are you
great-
voting? Are you voting for Trump for the third time, David?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Tim or Sean, explain why the polls might not be a bias against Trump again the same way, or they confirm that they are.
Right. I mean, it is you like polling is, first of all, is like a very blunt instrument. I think people like to view it as like surgical precise, tracking one point this way, that way. That is not generally how it works. But I think there has been some revision since 16, since 20 on how pollsters are doing their measurement of the people that they are calling and the weighting, the multimodal way that they are contacting people, how in particular they are weighting education and income. So the real answer, though, is we don't know. Like, we will not know. This is where the polls are telling us where we are, but they could be wrong one way. They could be wrong the other way. We just know that they've made some changes to try to address what happened in 16 and 20.
So, David,
Sean.
we talk about this a lot. This all comes down to what they call in the industry the screen, right? So you're trying to figure out who these low propensity voters are, people who only vote in, say, 1 or 2 of 4 elections. The problem is that you're guessing. Does that newly registered voter in Pennsylvania actually go out and vote? And if so, who are they voting for? Does the person who only voted in 1 of 4 actually go out? They may tell the pollster they are, but then they don't actually vote. And that goes back to what Tim was saying, that afterwards we go, wow, the pollster screen was off. But when you're talking about, 10,000, 20,000, 40,000 people in these swing states, if you're off on your screen, remember N usually equals anywhere from 500 to 1,000. You're off a couple people who you thought likely voters would be, you're screwed. So I'm just saying that, that Tim's right. I mean, this is constantly an adjusting art where the pollsters are guessing. I think those people will vote now or not, but we won't know until after election day where we say, wow, they nailed it this time.
David, thank you. All right, Len, tell folks where you are who don't know who you're supporting and what's on your mind.
Hi, did you unmute me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. I joined this group about a month ago, and I was observing it with mix of like interest and partly amusement.
And a little bit of revulsion too, right, Len?
Yes.
Yeah, I figured. I can tell from your tone.
And
where are you, Len? Start by telling us where you are and who you're supporting for president.
I'm supporting Trump. And
where do you live, Len? Len, where do you live?
Upstate New York.
Okay. Ask your question, please, sir.
My question is, are we guys lost a feel of reality here? Put yourself in the shoes of the family of Donald Trump. He's hunted president. And we live in an echo chamber here. We discuss the situation for 5 minutes and switch to the polls. What kind of people we are? The whole America is totally not like that. I'm sorry. Wake up. We talk about polls. We have unprecedented hate campaign in the media. And we discussed Kamala Harris gave another interview nonsense. I'm so sorry, guys.
Okay. I appreciate the point of view. And I'd love to be cloned and spend the entire time talking about one topic on different networks, but we're trying to cover the waterfront with 50 days to go. We all talked about the issue you mentioned, but we talked about other things. I just want to say President Biden talked to Poole this morning and said the Secret Service needs more help. Len, I totally get your point and have great sympathy for it, and I think all of us do. It just we have to serve the reality of where we are in the process. People have strong feelings about the whole thing. We could spend every day talking about how horrible the media is. That would probably be the only thing that would satisfy everybody. Otherwise, we have to pick and choose.
One more thing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Make your point. Yes, sir.
The whole America is totally different way of thinking about it. It's a totally different view. I talk to my patients every day, and yesterday it was no other issue in the office. I'm a doctor. All my patients, I cannot stop them.
So can
Len, thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Real quick, and we're going to move to someone else. Go ahead.
Thing. I do think that we are, and again, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I just think we have 2 assassination attempts on a leading candidate for president. And to Len's point, it sort of occupies about, you know, a tenth of our space. The second point that I thought is interesting, and a viewer of mine from my show brought it up the other day that I think is fascinating, is I cannot personally fathom. Len mentioned his family. I talked to President Trump last week. I mean, just the idea of someone shooting at you and then shooting potentially at you again, what that does to you mentally and to your family. I saw Barron Trump tweeted last night, no matter what you think of President Trump or his family or whatever, the idea of going to bed at night thinking that there are people that are willing to kill you and you don't know whether you're golfing the next day or shopping the next day or meeting with a voter, or if you're the son or daughter of that person or the wife, that's what's happening on a daily basis. It's just got to scare the hell out of you and screw with your mind. And so
and
there's a mental health
when the protection is controlled by the people who don't want to stop you from winning. That's just a reality.
So anyway, it's a good point that Len made. And I think a lot.
Yep, Len, thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Len. We hope you come back, even though you find us revolting some days. Tom, tell folks where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
I'm in Minneapolis currently, but I live the rest of the year in Florida, and I will vote there. And I'm supporting Trump. I've tried to be a Trump hater, but I've flunked that course. And I would have I have a point and a question, and that is, I believe that Trump is running against two adversaries, the Democratic Party and the press. And I think the press is the more formidable opponent. Do you, as members of the press, have any strategy for Trump to overcome the extreme bias of our current press?
I'm going to take that one because I'm the only member of the actual member of the press here.
We've been inducted, so it's now we're all three.
I am outspoken throughout my career saying the press bias is a big problem. They have lots of biases, but the main one for presidential campaigns is against Republicans, and it's been supercharged against Donald Trump, which doesn't mean he's a perfect person. Doesn't mean that there aren't reasons to cover him tough, because there are many. I think the Trump campaign has largely given up trying to win the press over. He actually got more favorable coverage than Hillary Clinton did in 2016, so it's not impossible. But I think it's a combination of their frustration and the clock that they've largely given up. But I think J.D. Vance actually, for despite highlighting a flaw from what he said yesterday, I think J.D. Vance does a good job of calling out some of the bias, and I think that's the only thing that can be done. The most effective Republicans, and Sean was one of them when he was a full-time press person, is to maintain good personal relationships with the reporters, to open the door to the possibility of aggressively pointing out when they're biased. Sean.
I would just say there's 2 points to this. One is the inherent ideological bias that most of these folks come at the job with. And then to Mark's point, there's a personal piece to this. And that's the second part that the Trump folks have at this point, which is there's an inherent, we don't like you, we don't like your policies piece. Okay. But then there's a personal piece. Most of these guys, to Mark's point, want their calls returned and they want access. And so, one can't overcome the other, don't get me wrong. But I think at this point, the Trump campaign has realized that it's not going to happen. So it's not repairable.
Yeah. Tom, thank you for the question. All right. Now, just by the luck of the draw or the unluck of the draw, we've called on 3 straight Trump supporters. Got to get a Harris supporter in. And warn the affiliates we're going to run a bit over because we've got to do some housekeeping as well. Please put down your electronic hand if you're a Trump supporter. I know some of you. I see some of you that are. Joe, are you a Harris supporter, Joe? Joe, raise your regular hand if you're a Harris supporter, Joe. Joe, raise your hand. Now, George, are you a Harris supporter? Yes. All right. Here comes George. George, besides supporting Kamala Harris, tell folks where you are and what's on your mind.
I'm in a secret location between Ventura, California, and Carpinteria called Ojai, California.
Yeah, beautiful place. Good produce there.
Yeah. Farm to tables are.
Yeah.
Thank you guys, and
thanks for getting up early.
Well, you know what? My wife had to get on the road this morning, so I thought she set me up on the Zoom because I wasn't sure how to get on the Zoom. I've been watching you on YouTube. Anyway, long story short. This is what I'm wondering. You know, I abhor violence. I'm not a gun owner. I respect people who use guns for hunting and so forth, or want to have a gun. But we live in a culture now where Trump his dogma has run over his karma, and I keep thinking, if you have a rhetoric that is incendiary, let's just call it incendiary, okay, just to be fair. Where does that play in having people who have judgment, who aren't violent people, press, not the press, that are concerned about how he revs everybody up? I mean, we know we have too many guns in the world. We know we have in our world of America. What? I mean, that's not talked about. I mean, I know the press is biased against Trump. I know that, but is there a reason? People are all human.
George, a lot there. You were asking about gun control, the press, or both, or something else. I understand. I listened to every sentence, but
I think that Trump stirs up violence. I'm not a psychiatrist.
Well,
My wife.
Let me answer this in two ways. I don't think, regardless of whether if you accept the premise of what you're saying, I still don't find it acceptable. I mean, the idea that violence, I've said from the jump, I mean, going back to years now when I was at the RNC, is never the solution.
Yes.
So someone, you may find someone abhorrent, their views, their actions. You don't take it out violently, or in this case, by trying to kill them. That's never an acceptable course of action. So that's number one. And I think that, and I know you're not trying to do that. And so, George, I'm not, but when people try to excuse that, which we saw online a lot last night, oh, well, it's just, that's part of the problem, is that when we say, oh, well, they deserved it, right? This is never, and I want to be clear, that's not what you're doing. And but I'm saying that when we, in dialogue, and where you see that happening online, where people say, well, because of this, he kind of deserves it, that creates more of the acceptance of it and the problem of it. So that's number one. I mean, that's the biggest issue, as far as I'm concerned, is that it doesn't matter. You may not like him, then tune him out or whatever. But I would also say to you, as someone on the right, do you know how many times, as a former Trump official, the comments of Maxine Waters and Chuck Schumer, where they talked about surrounding Trump officials in a restaurant, didn't scare the hell out of me or my family? So
let me say one thing. Let me say one thing and then get Tim in, because this is all so complicated to talk about without causing a huge uproar. But let me pick my words carefully. Sean is right that you can go on Twitter or YouTube and find Republican clip reels of Maxine Waters and Chuck Schumer making remarks that are incendiary, but they are nothing compared to the volume of incendiary remarks Donald Trump makes every day. It's just not the same volume. Again, you can build a 5-minute clip reel, a 10-minute, a 20-minute clip reel. But Donald Trump every day says stuff, practically every day, that's incendiary. Doesn't in any way justify violence. It doesn't even justify the nonviolence attacks, some of the attacks he gets. But I think, if I understand now what George is saying, is we just have to deal with the reality is he's a very incendiary person, and he says things for political gain that incite people. And unfortunately, that leads to violence, but it also leads to a concerted effort to try to stop him from winning. Tim.
Yeah. I mean, I won't go further with this, but I mean, like, one thing that I saw yesterday, all violence like this should be condemned, right? I then saw someone remind that when Paul Pelosi was attacked, Donald Trump Jr. posted a picture of underwear and a hammer and said, "This is my Halloween costume." It's also just not poking fun or making light of serious situations when people's spouses or they have been attacked. It's just like, just take the volume down. That's what I'm saying. Like, put the phone down. Don't tweet incendiary things. It's especially on elected officials, right? Obviously, but it is on all of us to just not contribute to fanning the flames. I mean, I agree. I think Donald Trump is a uniquely incendiary individual. It's difficulty, but just don't add to the fire.
Yep. Thank you, Tim. George, thank you. And thanks for getting up early. And thanks to your wife for helping you get on the platform. And please come back regularly and send us,
you guys.
Send us some avocados if you would, because we can't get those.
I live in an avocado grove, Mark. What's your address?
Yeah. We'll get it to you, George. Thank you. I need more avocados. When people mail me avocados from California, they're better than I can get. Yeah, no, I'll share them. I'll give Tim and Sean at least one each. George, thank you. All right. So let's review. Today, 4 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to be conducting a focus group with undecided voters in battleground states who are part of the two-way community. These are not going to be normal undecided voters because they're part of the two-way community, but all of them are undecided voters who live in battleground states, some of whom you've seen here before, some not. That'll happen tonight. Then tonight at 6 Eastern time, we're going to show you some of the focus group and we'll talk about it. 6 Eastern time tonight. You'll get a notification about how to watch it on YouTube and how to watch it on two-way. And then tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time, Sean, Tim, and I will look at some of the focus group and we'll talk about it along with news of the day. And then at 5 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow, we're going to play the whole thing. We're going to play the whole 45-minute or so focus group, and then we're going to talk about it. So lots of opportunities. How are the battleground state undecided thinking about the debate? How are they thinking about the assassination attempt? How are they thinking about the race with 50 days to go? You don't see a lot of that. You don't see polls of undecided voters in the battleground states because they're too expensive. So this is an opportunity to hear voices from the battleground states. Again, 6 o'clock tonight, we'll show some of it again tomorrow in the morning meeting. And then 5 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow, we'll play the entire thing. And then we'll have a great panel of folks to talk about it. Sean and Tim, hopefully you'll be able to join us for some of this, but certainly we'll see you both at 9 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. Tim with a lowered voice, Sean with a semi-lowered voice. All right. Thanks, everybody who had questions. Sorry for those who had their hands up we didn't get to. Sorry for those who think the show is completely biased against Kamala Harris because we had 3 Trump questioners to 1 Harris questioner. Again, luck of the draw. No one I called on was known to me how they were supporting. That's just the way sometimes it goes. But tomorrow we might have all Harris supporters. You never know. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again today at 6, tomorrow at 9, tomorrow at 5. Have a great day.